Hello, everybody. Hope you can hear me clearly. Okay. So, I want to talk about the recent situation with the 2025 students, who took their WAEC exam in darkness at night. Nigerian students having to use candles, having to use their smartphone lights, and of course, the fact that they are able to use their smartphone lights in the exam hall means that they are using a smartphone that has internet connection inside the exam hall, which is obvious. So they can Google what the answer is. They can ask AI, they can ask ChatGPT what the answer is since they are using smartphones in the exam hall for lights. And of course, this is something that is brought upon them by the inefficiency of Nigeria. The educational system of Nigeria is a failure. How can students in Nigeria have to take their WAEC exam in darkness? What happened that the question papers and the whole setting, this is the funny thing. We are now living in a digital age and everybody wants to do everything digital. The government wants to do things digitally and they can't keep up. They don't upgrade the software and they don't go through the correct protocols. And part of it is because in Nigeria, shout out to all those joining, shout out to Chinedu Joseph, shout out to Mama C, shout out to AJ, shout out to Press Stitches, shout out to all you. Now, the issue in Nigeria where people get into positions of authority, people get into positions of power based on who they know and who they help. People are just helping their relatives. Because why is WAEC so inefficient that students have to take their exam in darkness? How do you expect them to pass? How do you expect them to prosper? How do you expect anything good to be done? And as I've said before, they are using their smartphone lights in the exam hall because no NEPA and the whole thing was done so late that night came. So the students were in school morning, afternoon, evening, waiting for WAEC and everything to get themselves together. These are students who came for exam, to take exam in the morning. They have to wait. We don't know how they will do with their feeding, of course, snacks in between, but what will they eat in the afternoon? So these are students that are also eating on a hungry stomach, writing exam on a hungry stomach at night. So morning, afternoon, evening, they had to stay in school waiting for everything to go, for the WAEC to get itself together. Then at night, they took the exam. It's crazy. And is this how a country should be run? How are things so inefficient? Then you saw some exam centers where they were using candle. Students were using candle to write WAEC exam. Later, when they will fail, it will be like what? It shows the lack of seriousness. And the funny thing is that on the education budgets, you will always hear this billion goes to education, this billion goes to education, this billion. And interestingly, the Minister of Education, I'm sure his children are studying abroad. A lot of those people who the high ranking members of the Ministry of Education, I'm sure that their children are studying abroad, not in Nigeria. So that position that they got is for them to be stealing money. That is so sad, and it goes across a lot of departments. Look at what is happening with NAFDAC and that market in Anambra State, the market in Onitsha, the pharmaceutical market, and all the other places where these government officials are exploiting. The same thing with the police. Anywhere you see a Nigerian policeman, they're asking you for bribe, for money. The whole thing, what kind of nation is this bringing? And what are the children when they grow up, what are they going to do? What do we expect from children when they grow up and this is the life? They see all this kind of nonsense going on. It is so sad. And the funny thing is that nothing is going to be done. Nobody is going to be held to account. And that's another thing about Nigeria. When a Nigerian politician steals money, there's no repercussions. If it is a place like Japan, if a politician steals money in Japan, he's going to get killed. Straight up. They do not take any play. Perhaps we need to bring that system into Nigeria. When a Nigerian politician, for example, you will see that the Nigerian politician, they will put headline that he stole 50 billion. They will take him to court. He will end up paying something like, in court cases, and the money that the EFCC and whatever we retrieve will now end up being something like 2 billion. But the guy stole 50 billion. So that is now 48 billion left that he now has. He has now paid 2 billion to settle all his, like if it is business. Like that is the cost of the bribe. He stole 50 billion, then he will end up paying 2 billion. 2 billion will be recovered, and then for lawyer and all this thing, court case and all of that. He has walked away with 48 billion. That is the Nigerian system. We need to start holding politicians to account. Politicians need to start being punished. We cannot have a country where people misbehave, where things, as a matter of fact, for NEPA taking light, when you have paid for electricity bill and NEPA takes light, the Ministry of Electricity, all those people that are involved, they should pay you, they should reimburse you, and they should be held to account. NEPA should not be taking light. There is no excuse. All the stupid excuses are saying that Nigeria does not have the capacity to generate enough electricity for Nigeria. Whose fault is it? Whose fault is it? We live in a world where there are so many different companies. There are so many different advancements. So you mean to tell me that you cannot open the gates and let independent people start businesses? One of the problems when it comes to electricity generation in Nigeria is that, and basically almost advancement in so many areas of Nigeria, is that the government wants to control everything, and they want to control everything in such a way that the politician that is in power in that time gets paid the lion's share. For example, if a road needs to be constructed, the politicians will have to do it in a way that he puts money in his own pocket. Either he uses a firm that's a relative of his owns, or he himself is a co-owner of the construction firm, or something funny like that. That is always the situation. Rain is falling. I don't know if you guys can still hear me. Shout out to those joining. PK Forms, Dolapo, Grace, T-Mac, Otimi. Shout out to everybody who has joined. Rain is falling here. I don't know if it's affecting what is being said. Feel free to, put in comments and ask questions. Anything you want me to address. But I want to focus on, this issue. I'm talking about growth in Nigeria and why things work the way they do. Politicians always want to do things in a way that they become rich. Look at Tinubu, for example. Everything that he has done has helped his son, either a business his son owns or co-owns in one way or the other. When politicians are going, like, look at the situation. Tinubu says he's going outside to bring investors, but investors are leaving. We see all the investors that have always been here in previous administrations leaving. The reality of the matter is that you do not go and find investors. Investors come to you. Let me ask you people a question. Let's say you have um, 10 million or 20 million extra, money with you. And then I come to you, I have this business I want to do, blah, 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 blah. I want you to invest. That is offer one. Compared to offer two, you already see an existing business that is prospering, perhaps like a GT Bank that is advancing, or perhaps like an OPay, or perhaps like a foreign company like PayPal or Tesla. You see it advancing. Which is wiser and safer as an investor for you to put your money in? Is it to put your money in the idea that I'm bringing to you, which is a new idea, which may work or may not work? Even even if I have no plans of doing anything fraudulent, I understand that majority of new startups fail. I understand that is a fact. Which is more prudent for you to put your money in? A new business idea or an existing business idea that is already prospering? So that is how investors think. So all these politicians that are saying, I'm going abroad to look for investment, they will not listen to you, because if you are a king and somebody from another country comes to you and says, I want you to invest in my country is this, my country is that, my country is this, why will you invest? At best, you may give something for charity, but that is not what you are looking at investing. You, as a king or as a leader in that country, you are already looking at what is growing. And you yourself, you will go to what is already growing and put your money inside. Because it's not just your money, it's the future of your country is at stake. So you don't want to gamble. You don't want to gamble. So that is the reality of it. Understand that there are investment bankers who it is their job to look for investment opportunities. There are independent investors who it is their job. They are looking, where am I going to invest money and it will grow? So the truth about investments is that all these politicians that are saying they are going abroad to look for investment, they are lying. And they are doing it the wrong way. It shows their ignorance of how investors even think. Investors build something that is working and investors will come. That is how investors think. Investors they have their eye all over the world, looking where is growing. They want something that is already growing, something that they can project. This thing in the future, look at how far it has gone. It will go even further. Then they will invest in it. Tinubu cannot be going around looking and asking for investors. Then people look at Nigeria and then they see all the insecurity in the north. They see all the foreign companies that have run away. And then you will tell me that Tinubu is going to do that. What Tinubu is actually doing is he's using the state's money, the Nigerian money, to try to broker deals that will partner his own companies with other nations. So other foreign companies and countries will be partnering in conjunction with companies that Tinubu and other politicians own to do projects in Nigeria. That is what he's doing. And that is one problem with Nigeria. If you open the gates and make it easy, like for example, I have said it many times, from Nigeria, you can register a company in America in less than 30 minutes. And you can do your research. Look at a registered agent. You can register a company. That is how easy they have made it. It's difficult for you from Nigeria to go to America and say that you want to become a citizen of America or you want to visit America. That process is difficult. But for you to invest in America, they have made it simple. That is smart. Why don't we make it simple where somebody can be in the UK, America, whatever country they are, they can quickly register a business in Nigeria in less than 30 minutes online. They go to a Nigerian website that works. They register a company and then they get employees and everything. Make it smooth for people to come here, everyday people, and start businesses. That is how businesses grow. Businesses, if you look at the history of great companies and look at all around the world, the companies that become big were not companies that were founded by the government. It is companies that were started by everyday people that became big and perhaps later on partnered with the government. Tesla IBM, Microsoft, Apple, all these companies, none of them were started with seed capital from the government. It's not the government that first started it that say, I want to do each project. Let us do this. Let us open like a bank, like a Wells Fargo or a JP Morgan Chase. That was JP Morgan himself. So you have to understand this thing. Companies are built by people. So if the doors are open, let everybody invest. But the problem with why they will not want to do it is that if they do it now, people will now be able to start companies that do not profit the politicians. The politicians cannot own large percentage of shares in such companies because the reality of the matter is that there are already companies around the world that can easily move into Nigeria. If you remove all the barriers, they can move into Nigeria and supply Nigeria with more than enough electricity. That is the reality. We'll have a situation. Do you know how many solar panels are in the world that are in warehouses? Those solar panels can be, rather than being in warehouse, they can be put on people's roofs and start supplying people, and then they break down the fees for the full payments into monthly instrumental payments that people will be able to afford in Nigeria and all across Africa. It is something that can easily be done. That is the reality. So the issue of electricity can be easily solved, but if it is solved through that means by just opening the floodgates and letting any foreign company come in and let everybody come in and generate electricity, it will cut out a lot of politicians from starting, companies that will control so much. That is problem number one. Also, you have to understand that things like the World Bank and IMF have already made deals with Nigerian politicians on how they should operate and what they should do. And that is the same problem with Tinubu. That is why Tinubu, a lot of things that Tinubu does serves the World Bank's interest. It serves the IMF's interest. It serves the interest of France, not the interest of Nigerians. If you look at a lot of politicians in Nigeria, and even sometimes when you look at journalists, they are parroting the same things that you hear on MSNBC, on CNN, and all of that. They are an extension of those people. They are not working on behalf of the Nigerian people. For example, when it comes to electricity, I'm sure you heard about the governor that said that he wanted to put a tax on people who use solar in his state. And this is an Igbo, governor, an Igbo state. I believe it was Enugu, He said that he wanted to put a tax on people, and I'm Igbo just for the record, He said he wanted to put a tax on people who use solar. Nigerians are already suffering. Nigerians have already been suffering with lack of electricity. Then the Nigerian that manages to get solar, that has paid money to get solar, you now want to put tax on him, so you are penalizing him for owning solar and saying that no, he has to use the national grid. The national grid is not providing 24 hours light, and people have the right to use what source of electricity they want. But the thing is that these people have targets that and advice from the World Bank. We are giving you this loan, and you will get the money back. We suggest you do this, and you have to get this money back. So if many people now jump to solar, the money that he would have made from NEPA, and keep in mind that a lot of people own shares in NEPA, a lot of politicians, And for those of you who are watching this who do not know, you can make money from NEPA by buying shares in Jiregu PLC and Transco PLC. Let me say that again. You can make money from NEPA, from this electricity and this electric tariff. You see what I mean? NEPA. So that was the sound of my inverter, So me myself, I'm in darkness, no NEPA. I was using the inverter, but the sun is very low and the inverter was making that sound, so I had to put it off for the sun to come back home. So that is the situation that we are in. Even I am in the same, obvious situation. And this is the situation that, these politicians has put us in. So, like I was saying, and for those of you who may be wondering, does this mean that sometimes, it depends on the solar. The solar that I'm using is very old, and hasn't been upgraded in a while. So, normally, in spite of low sun and all of that, your solar, depending on the load, it will still go. But in this case, the solar we are using, is old and all of that. So this is what has happened. I mean, you know, darkness. This is they have not even been lights. They have not been electricity as in NEPA electricity throughout from morning to now throughout today. There was light previously yesterday, but this is Nigeria for you, and I'm sure many of you are used to it. So back to what I'm saying. That governor that was putting tax on people who use solar is because of these kinds of things. You know, when the IMF and the World Bank puts goals, oh, you have to make this much money. This is the kind of thing that happens. He wants to make that money by hook and by crook. But whose interest is it for? It's for the World Bank that wants to make their money. It's for the IMF. It's not for the Nigerian people. And that is another thing. The Nigerian politicians do not care about the Nigerian people. Hands down, they do not care. And like I said before, for those of you who are watching this, if you are not um, in any way linked to the Nigerian Stock Exchange, if you don't have a stockbroker and you don't invest in Nigerian Stock Exchange, you are doing yourself a great disservice. You have to help yourself. Throughout this high electric tariff thing, you can make money from it if you own shares in Transcorp and Jerigo. Jerigo PLC is making a lot of money. It's traded on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. So get yourself a stockbroker. Stanbic Bank has a stock brokerage firm. Stanbic IBTC. So go to their website and check for their stock brokerage firm. Almost every bank has a stock brokerage firm. Stanbic is the biggest when it comes to the number of customers and the amount of money. And they are old when it comes to their stock brokerage firm. Their stock brokerage firm, Stanbic Stockbrokers, is the biggest. GT Bank has its own. It's called Investment One. So you can go to GT Bank websites. And I know why there are other people who are stockbrokers, but I know why I'm referring you to stock brokerage firms that are owned by banks. I know why I'm doing that. So you can also check First Bank. First Bank's their stock brokerage firm is called First Capital. You can still go to First Bank websites. When you go to all these companies' website, this is a good habit that you should have. Read everything. Don't just read the offers at the top. Go to the bottom of the page. Look for careers. Look for other companies that are linked to that company. Click the About Us so you can understand the history of those companies and also look at the owners. Because, one thing is unfortunate that there are people who can tell you the names and surnames and the biographies of all the people who have ever played for Arsenal or who have ever played for Chelsea or Man U. They can tell you all their names and history. But things like this, who knows? You may enter a taxi or a bus with a CEO, but you don't know. Because that is not what the kind of thing you like to know. If it is Davido, if you enter a bus with Davido, you will know. Those are the kind of people, who Davido is, who Burna Boy is. But there are people who are very rich and very powerful, who may walk around you. But because you are not interested in knowing who owns Indomie, who owns Konga.com, who owns Jumai.com. And a lot of times when you do all this research and start thinking in this way, you'll be surprised that it is the same people that own a lot of all these things. That is the funny thing. So you have to do your research, and you have to be somebody that looks into All these things, be interested. Who owns this? When you go to the market and you buy something, you see a new product and you see that it's selling. Look at what is the name of the manufacturer. Where was it made? Also check, is it available on the Nigerian Stock Exchange? Imagine if you had bought stock in GT Bank in 1999, or you bought stock in First Bank in the 80s. A lot of you, if you are watching me now, you came from somewhere. You did not fall from the sky. So your parents were alive in the 80s. What were your parents doing with their money? Keep in mind that in the 80s and in the 70s, the dollar was lower than the naira. Especially 60s, 60s towards 70s, the naira had more value than the dollar. So imagine if your grandpa or your grandma had been buying stocks in many of these companies, bought stocks in this bank, bought stock in that bank. What will be the value now? Imagine how many billions, that is your descendants, your lineage will have. So that is the thing. So change the way you think, So even with NEPA and, the misfortune, understand that Transcorp PLC is making money. Transcorp generates electricity that it sells to the government. The same thing with Jeregu PLC. So in this Tinubu economy, Jeregu PLC and Transcorp PLC is making a lot of money. So buy stocks in them, and I've told you, you can go through Stanbic stockbrokers, or you can go through investments one which is owned by GT Bank. So get yourself into this, and always understand that there's cause and effect of everything. So with every tragedy, there is a monetization that is happening behind it. For example, if there is a war, that means that those who are supplying weapons, those who make weapons are going to make a lot of money. It also means that those who provide pharmaceutical services are going to make a lot of money, because there are going to be a lot of wounded soldiers. You understand? So it is a tragedy. War is a tragedy, but behind it, there is a monetization. And it goes for everything. A wise man once said, success is what happens when you look out for a human need and reach out to meet that need. Success is all about meeting needs. So anywhere there's a problem, there's an opportunity to make money. By providing the solution and selling it, sell the solution. You have to know how to package the solution for the problem and sell that solution to the problem. So like even me in this situation with no lights, as there's no NEPA, it highlights the opportunity and the importance of me myself selling solar panels or selling solar services or just investing in solar. I've already invested, the little of some of what I have in Transcorp PLC and Jeregu PLC, and those stocks are doing well, So those are things that you can do. You can always understand that with tragedy, there is good news. There is a way to monetize it. There is a way to make money off providing the solution. So, like in this situation where WAEC students are taking exam in darkness, which is sad, it also brings to question. This is also an opportunity for foreign schools and for online courses. And when it comes to solutions, there are solutions that obviously would have to involve the government. But let me talk about, since I'm on this route, independent solutions. Like the lady who started lynda.com, a website that, was built to teach people skills. You yourself on YouTube or even on TikTok or whatever, you can start your own brand and educational channel where you teach people stuff. The same thing that they teach in schools, you can offer your own courses and your own lessons. That is one way, and that can be monetized even if you do not sell it. You know, even if it's not for sale, the mere YouTube monetization by default and AdSense goes a long way. I don't know if you guys can still hear me because of the rain. The rain is really intensifying. I'm guessing some of you are still hearing what I'm saying. You know, so that being said, it can be monetized. In addition to that, when it comes to addressing the issue from what the government, what you can prompt the government to do, that is another issue, because we the people need to create a situation where we make the government. This is something else. I don't think I can go on like this with the rain. With the rain. Oh boy. Shout out to Abasi, shout out to Mama T, shout out to everyone who has joined, who involve themselves in this. Shout out to LD. I clicked the button and ended up liking my own live, which is funny. Anyway, back to what I was saying. The rain is coming down with it, so I believe you can hear me now. When it comes to what can be done with the government and with the situation of the WAEC, oh boy, I'll say that I'll say this. Shout out to Pralad. Well, anyway, like I'll say, the rain is disturbing the flow of the whole thing. So I'll just basically summarize. When it comes to what we can do with regards to the government, we have to put ourselves in a situation where, with every position of the government, the people have a say. Right now, in a quote-unquote democracy, we have the power of the vote, allegedly. So when it comes to voting in people on a local level, the local government chairman and all of that, we have to make sure that these people answer to us. Because the reality of the matter is that these positions, political positions, should be looked upon as service positions. It's not a position for someone to be a boss and lord it over everyone. It's not a king position. It's not a position where people should not look at politics as a position for them to be above others, but as a position for them to serve. That is what it's supposed to be. So we have to be smart, you understand, and make sure these politicians understand that they are there to serve us. So we have that power to make sure that certain people are put down. We need to break out of this mindset of politicians can get away with everything. I guess I also have to break away from that mindset. We have to break away from that mindset and hold politicians accountable and people in power, and make it clear people have to stand together and stop accepting bribe. We need to stand together and say, hey, if you are a politician, you need to do this. Hey, if you are put in this position, this and this is what you do. If you fall short, we kick you out, we fire you. The people should be able to fire the people in office. They work for us. They are not our gods. They are not our kings. So that is how it's supposed to be. And that is what we need to do. We need to create a situation where the politicians are answerable to us. The leaders are answerable to us. Like this WAEC situation. Of course, we can go around it on an individual level by sending your kid abroad, and that takes a lot of money, and that is sadly only available to those who have the money. But when it comes to online schools and free online schools, so there's that pathway. Interestingly, this kind of nonsense that happened with WAEC can never happen with SAC. There are students who are taking SAT and TOEFL in Nigeria this year that this nonsense is not going to happen. They are not going to take it in darkness at night. But it's only happening with WAEC because, number one, nothing is going to happen. There's no accountability, and the politicians don't care about the Nigerian people. The number one enemy of the Nigerian people are the Nigerian politicians. So we have to do what we can to push for the life and the future that we want. So when it comes to several different issues, I want to talk about how someone can affordably get an education for their kids. And also that is an opportunity for someone to provide it. Because how possible is it? And it is somewhat possible for someone to start a school in Nigeria that is registered outside Nigeria. In other words, they have the approval and the certification of perhaps an American university, perhaps they are an affiliate of an American university or an American high school or some other school somewhere else in Africa. That way they don't have to answer to the Nigerian educational system and the Ministry of Education and its faults. And of course, this will work best when they have that kind of school that opens in Nigeria has an online pipeline for people to enroll and be a part of that school. Because the Nigerian educational system is clearly a failure. And the people who are in charge don't care because their own children are studying abroad and getting the best education. And the money that they are stealing is funding their children's life abroad. So when somebody takes advantage of this situation, and we create our own school in Nigeria that may be a subsidiary of schools in America or whatever, so it's not subject to the WAEC, the NECO, the JAM, and students come and read and learn. So they are not getting certification or degrees from Nigeria, but they are getting it from that whatever foreign country. I believe that is workable and that can be done. So it will cover primary school, secondary school, and university. And it will create a smooth pipeline where people will not have to suffer all the nonsense and injustices of the Nigerian educational system, the WAEC, the NECO, the JAMB, and all of that. So it can be done, especially if they have an online pipeline where people can enroll and go through the entire process. And I've talked before about when it comes to the future, or perhaps this is going to be the first time I'm taking it in this direction. At this point, the internet connection is a bit unstable. So let me stop the live here. Shout out to everybody, that joined and participated. Shout out to you. Thanks. God bless you.